to harbor some of those same misogynistic views.
Even if you didn't do any of the Sam Hyde stuff, why would we want you at our event? Like, if you're just gonna blatantly disrespect sex workers and women and other fighters, I think it's just pretty clear that he holds similar opinions to Sam Hyde and similar opinions to Sam Hyde fans.
But even with all that, Ian's saying that this doesn't just have to do with him and Anissa feeling personally insulted by those remarks.
There are a lot of people who don't want anything to do with Sam Hyde who are fighting on our card. There are a lot of people who are our fans who want nothing to do with Sam Hyde. So we're trying to protect them. We're trying to protect the environment that we're in.
Right, depending on what part of the internet you went to, you saw drastically different reactions. Right, some watched that video and were like, that's an entirely reasonable explanation of why you wouldn't want someone to be a part of your event. Or people saying that it looked like Ian and Anissa were trying to work with him, but he just didn't want to work with them. But then you'd go somewhere else and it was just people dogpiling Ian, calling the decision dumb or pathetic. And so with all that, I want to pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts with this whole mess? Or which camp do you land in and why? And also, if you want a clearer picture, I'm trying to make this consumable. If you want to watch a full video, I'm going to link to it down below like I do with pretty much everything I cover on this show. Yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts. And then, some bad news for weed smokers. According to a new study today published in Psychological Medicine, as many as 30% of cases of schizophrenia among men aged 21 to 30 could have been prevented had they avoided cannabis use disorder, with reportedly young men who use potent marijuana frequently having an increased risk of developing schizophrenia. With co-author Nora Volkow, who's also the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, saying while the Danish population, which is the source here because they got 7 million Danish health records, doesn't have as much diversity as the US and genetics play a role in schizophrenia risk, the findings should concern people of all ethnic backgrounds, also calling the evidence sufficiently strong, and so strong that you should be cautious, especially if you have schizophrenia running in your family. Though notably, with all this, the data appears to show that women are less affected by the use, at least comparatively. Right, and the study is notable for a number of reasons, but one of them is also timing. Right, currently, you have many US cannabis companies increasing the potency of their product. In fact, so much so that we're starting to hear more and more voices, whether it be in the US or in other countries like Germany, saying, hey, maybe we need to put a cap on the potency. Which I will say, as someone that occasionally partakes, yeah, some of you smoking some crazy shit. What feelings are you running away from? I'm just trying to wind down after a stressful day, but some of y'all going to the moon nightly. Right, but overall, concerning news, especially as consumption has been on the rise, and it's something that we're gonna have to keep our eyes on with even the people behind this study saying we need more research on it. And then, the Amazon labor union has become a shit show, with us now having even more allegations of violence. With this time, the focus on Derek Palmer, the union's vice president, reportedly admitting to strangling his girlfriend last year on police body camera footage, with him reportedly back in October being indicted on 2 counts of second-degree aggravated assault. And if he's convicted, obviously you're talking jail time, but also he would be barred from serving as a union officer. And this notably coming not a month after video emerged of union president Chris Smalls fighting a fellow organizer outside the Staten Island warehouse. And all that amid a deepening divide within the ALU over alleged mismanagement by Smalls and his leadership, whom members accuse of being more concerned about personal fame than actually running the union. And then, it's a bad, no good day for the Ed Sheeran haters out there. Because Ed, he just won a copyright case over his song Thinking Out Loud, meaning he won't be quitting the music industry after all. Or if you didn't know, here are the key details. He was accused of copying elements from Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On, and the family of Ed Townsend, who co-wrote Let's Get It On, sued Ed over the matter, specifically saying both songs shared similar chord patterns, with the New York Times noting that the case asked questions of originality in pop music and whether the use of basic musical elements like chord progressions and simple rhythmic patterns can be owned by a single creator or are free for any musician to use and adapt. And for his part, Ed maintained that he didn't copy Let's Get It On, even taking to the stand with his guitar to play part of Thinking Out Loud to explain what the songwriting process was like. At one point, like I even mentioned, he went so far as to say that if he lost this case, he would just quit music. But, of course, he doesn't have to do that with a jury now siding with him. So yeah, a bad, no good, tough day if you run an Ed Sheeran hate account, but for a lot of people in the music and creative industries, people see this as a win. And that obviously including Ed, who says that, musical chords are common building blocks that have been used to create music long before Let's Get It On was even written. Others supporting writing things like chord progressions are everywhere in music and rules typically govern how chords are ordered. So of course, there's overlap across an entire industry. And adding here that essentially a crisis has been averted. Or because had Ed lost, moving forward, every musician has to use half their creative juices on making sure no one else has ever produced a similar sound, lest they get sued out the wazoo, with one musician kind of making the comparison that the lawsuit and its implications are the musical version of saying to a painter, you'll have to pay to use red. And then, having multiple pairs of earbuds is almost a must nowadays. Be at a meeting running really long and your earbuds are dying, or you misplace a pair and you're heading out on a hike. And well, that's where the fantastic sponsor of today's show comes in, Raycon. Raycon's on a mission to prove that you shouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg for quality sound and essential smart tech listening features. And starting at half the price of other premium audio brands, you can get a pair and a spare. And they're really comfortable with optimized gel tips for the perfect in-ear fit so they won't budge, and really, trust me, they will not budge. I've used and tested these for years. Plus, personally, I choose a pure sound profile for when I'm listening to podcasts, balanced sound when the music changes up, and I absolutely love bass sound for when I'm getting really into it. And the noise isolation mode's great for when I'm flying, and I can quickly move to awareness mode when moving through the airport. So y'all, grab a pair and a spare by clicking the link in the description box, or go to buyraycon.com/DeFranco to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. And remember, they offer free shipping, free returns, and buy now, pay later options, plus a 30-day happiness guarantee. And then Clarence Thomas is a whole ass sugar baby at this point, except instead of sucking dick for money, he fucks a whole country for it, y'all. How is there even more news coming out about him? So much had already recently been exposed, and there's more. When you have political institutions and government, you know that there's gonna be corruption. But to see it happening in the Supreme Court is especially concerning. Right, in the past, when you think about the different branches of government, you think about checks and balances. One of the ones that people would hold in the highest of regards was the Supreme Court, thinking of it as the biggest check and balance. But what we've discovered, in large part thanks to billionaire Harlan Crow, is that we all got it wrong. He writes checks to undo the balances. Right, and what I'm specifically talking about is that ProPublica has now published another report on the sketchy-ass relationship between a high court justice and a billionaire real estate magnate and Republican megadonor. And this notably coming just weeks after the absolutely stunning report that revealed that Thomas had been accepting incredibly expensive luxury gifts from Crow for over 2 decades without disclosing them. And what we're seeing with this latest report is like Crow is coming up with every possible way to throw money at this man. And in this case, a third person, Justice Thomas's grandnephew, Mark Martin. Right, because in 2008, Thomas decided that he was going to send his grandnephew, Mark Martin, to Hidden Lake Academy, a private boarding school in northern Georgia. And Martin had lived with Thomas and his wife for years and was in their legal custody, with the justice recently telling an interviewer he was raising him as a son. But the tuition at this boarding school was just insanely high at over $6,000 a month, which, hey, is a big spend, but seemingly something that the couple could afford. Thomas and his wife bring in combined incomes of more than $500,000 in 2006 and over $850,000 in 2007. But turns out, like with a lot of things that we've learned recently, the Thomases did not foot the bill. Instead, according to a bank statement for Hidden Lake from July of 2009, Crow's company paid for Martin's tuition that month. And Christopher Grimwood, a former administrator at the school, said that it went beyond just that month. In fact, claiming that Crow covered Martin's tuition the whole time he was there, which was around a year. But again, it doesn't just stop there. Grimwood also saying that Crow had told him that he had paid for Martin's tuition at another private boarding school called Randolph-Macon Academy that he had attended both before and after he went to Hidden Lake. And according to reports, the exact total Crow paid for Martin's education over the years remains unclear, but if he paid for all 4 years at the 2 schools, the price tag could have exceeded $150,000. And very notably, when Crow's office responded to ProPublica's questions, they did not dispute the facts presented, but said that Crow has long been passionate about the importance of quality education and giving back to those less fortunate, especially at-risk youth, and adding that he and his wife have supported many young Americans through scholarship and other programs at a variety of schools, including his alma mater, Randolph-Macon Academy. Going on to say tuition and other financial assistance is given directly to academic institutions, and concluding, it's disappointing that those with partisan political interests would try to turn helping at-risk youth with tuition assistance into something nefarious or political. To which I have to ask, to whoever or whatever group made this statement, did you do it like straight face? How is a child in the legal care of a couple making nearly $1 million a year? And that's just of what we know. Unfortunately, given all the unreported things that we're finding out, I have to add that clarifier. But how is that person less fortunate? Especially when you consider the fact that Martin also told ProPublica himself that he got to join in on some of the lavish trips that Thomas took with Crow. Right, visiting Crow's Adirondacks estate, 2 cruises on Crow's super yacht, or I'm sorry, is it a super yacht or is it a less fortunate yacht? Since we're apparently just slapping on descriptors that don't make any sense. Like if you said the Honorable before Clarence Thomas. But also, with this story, after ProPublica published their story, a longtime friend of Thomas who has also served as a lawyer for the justice's wife released a statement confirming that Crow had indeed paid for Martin's tuition at both private schools, though also arguing that Thomas was not required to disclose those payments because Martin was not his dependent child as defined under disclosure law. But you have experts saying that the claim that Thomas didn't have to disclose Crow's tuition payments to Martin is still bullshit, because what minor pays their own $6,000 a month tuition to a fancy-ass boarding school? And noting, typically the legal guardian is responsible for the child's education. And this, as ethics law experts told ProPublica, they believe that Thomas was required by law to disclose the tuition payments because they appear to be a gift to him. And what's more, Thomas himself has literally reported a similar tuition payment made by another friend on behalf of Martin in his financial disclosures. A fact that experts say could show that Thomas understood that he was required to disclose tuition aid given to him by friends, but just chose not to with Crow, a man that experts and lawmakers say has shown a clear interest in the court. As we've talked about, he has given millions to efforts to move the judiciary to the right while also serving on boards of think tanks that promote conservative legal legal theories. But that's where we are with this whole sketchy-ass situation, and it feels like it's just a matter of time until we find out what else Sugar Daddy Crow did for little baby Clarence. And then, are you on a secret government list right now? That may sound far-fetched, but a lot of people who thought they weren't are now finding out they are. And for the latest example of that, you can just ask Prospect Park Mayor Mohammed Karula. He's the longest-serving Muslim mayor in New Jersey. He fled Syria with his family back in the 1980s, became a citizen in 2000, got elected to the Prospect Park Council in 2001, and then became mayor in 2005. And since then, he's grown to be a revered and influential figure both in his local community and among New Jersey Muslims, which is exactly why on Monday, the White House invited him and hundreds of other Muslims to a belated celebration marking the end of Ramadan, with Karula even helping the Democratic Party compile a list of Muslim American leaders to invite. But when just minutes away from the White House, Karula got a phone call from the Secret Service abruptly disinviting him from the event without any explanation. So he talks to the Council on American Islamic Relations, and it turns out that his name is on a secret FBI terrorist